As a woman, one of the things that's really interesting is how good looking you are. And I've always said I'm like perfect. I'm just good looking enough to not be unattractive, but I'm not good looking enough to be threatening. And when you're a young woman, this is actually a perfect spot to be, because you don't scare the hell out of everybody, but you also don't make them want to throw up. And what's interesting is that we don't want to talk about this kind of stuff. Because
we want to talk about this.
Lorna Davis, we're so excited to have you here today. We've known each other for a few years now. You actually witnessed Loopy before it even was Loopy, and we've stayed in touch ever since. And you are here today to share a little bit more about your transition from an incredibly successful career as president and CEO of major multinational consumer brands like Danone and Mondelez to now being an executive coach and public speaker. And we're really excited to dive into that journey and also talk a little bit more about your personal passions, one of them being your interest in wildlife conservation, especially as it pertains to rhino conservation. So thank you so much for being here. This is such a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. We're so excited about this conversation today. And I think where we really want to start is, how does somebody who has worked on 5 continents and 7 countries, did I get that right? Choose to go from being this high-powered CEO to stepping away and becoming a coach who works with entrepreneurs?
I like that question, and I've been asked it before, of course, and I like to answer it fresh each time, whatever makes sense to me right now. There are probably 2 parts to that question. One is what caused me to walk away from corporate, and the second is what caused me to become a coach. So I'll start with the first. A lot of people talk about this moment when something happens, this sort of pivotal awakening or something. For me, it was a few little bits that kind of added to each other. And now that I look back, I saw that they were leading to the moment, I guess. One of them was China. I lived in Shanghai for 6 years, and China changed me dramatically as a person. But it also woke me up in a way that I really saw the implications on the planet of 1 billion people wanting what Americans have had for so long. I saw the roads being paved, the meat being eaten. I saw, and I thought, this business that I'm engaged in, and at that time I was selling Oreos to Chinese people with much enthusiasm, this business is not sustainable. There's something wrong with what I'm doing. And I didn't like that sort of notion, but it lodged in my head. And then I was promoted, and I say this with big inverted commas, to the US. And I had never lived in the US before. And of course, when you come from a country like mine, I'm South African, the US is this big, amazing place. It's the pinnacle, it was the pinnacle. And I was shocked when I came to the US. I've lived in lots of countries, and people have said which is the easiest, the most fun, and all. There's no doubt that the US is the hardest country I've ever moved to.
Wow.
Because it's so individualistic. And having come from China where people are so collective, the sort of I want of the US sort of broke my heart open in a way that I couldn't articulate at the time.
Wow.
And so it was this sort of gradual realization that this was not the way that I wanted to live. And then at the same time, I started to see that if we were really going to transform the way the world operates, it was individuals who were awake and alive and connected that were going to do the doing. And as a result, individual leadership was a really important thing for me to engage in. And frankly, a one-on-one conversation with an individual, and I work mostly with women, and I work mostly with women who are doing really interesting things, brings me alive in a way that I can't explain. There's something miraculous to me about having a one-on-one conversation with somebody who's trying to do something amazing in the world. And so it seemed really natural when it was time to go from the one to the other, given that whole backdrop. And that was a long answer to your question, but I think it sort of sums up how it looks to me today.
And was business always something you wanted to go into, like when you grew up?
Complete mystery to me. My dad had fought in the Second World War, and he had the same job in a construction company for his whole life. My mom didn't work. I didn't know anything about business. I went to university to study psychology and anthropology. I was fascinated by humans, and of course South African anthropology was a very interesting political subject at that time, which is another subject. And then it was one of those random things where I had said to my dad, I want to go on and do my master's. And my dad said, I think it might be a good idea for you to go and get a job first, And so I thought, oh, okay. So there was this kind of careers thing at college, like you have here. And there was this door that said Unilever marketing. And I thought, I remember saying to somebody, what is marketing? And they said, well, you know how when you like want to go to a concert or something and there are those big posters up on the wall, it's like telling people to go to the concert. That's marketing. I thought, oh, that's fun. I've done a bit of that stuff before. So I just pushed open that door, and then I got offered a job at Unilever, and then I landed up in business, and I landed up being much better at it than I expected. And then that's what happens when you get on the fast track when you're a youngster and you're, I guess, successful. They just keep moving you, and that's why I've moved so much, because they just keep sending you to the next country.
And you said yes,
country.
Clearly, to all the opportunities, always.
Yeah, I thought this is the most fun, and as a South African, I wanted to get out of that country, and so I wanted to see the world. Just because it was a very restrictive censorship country, as well as all the other things. So yeah, it was just like a big roller coaster, actually.
Can you say why you think they kept moving you, why they kept pushing you forward, why they kept offering you more?
When I look back at that young person, I was super curious. I like to think actually that a lot of success is a lot more random than we like to think. And I think there are a few things that I was just super lucky about. And this is not sort of fake anything. This is genuinely my assessment. First of all, I'm just clever enough, but not too clever. And that's perfect because I really need other people, which actually makes me a really good leader. And people like working for me because they know I need them. And one of the worst things you can do as a leader is not need your people. And I've always really needed my people, So my finance people particularly like, yeah, we like working for her because she has no clue what we're talking about, but she listens, So right. I think that's to be, like I've had a lot of people work for me, and I have worked with a lot of people who are sort of too clever for their own good. And their intellect gets in the way. And I think I have a good balance of intellect and real love for humans, like real connection with humans. The second thing is, and this is really, as a woman, one of the things that's really interesting is how good looking you are. And I've always said I'm like perfect. I'm just good looking enough to not be unattractive, but I'm not good looking enough to be threatening. And when you're a young woman, this is actually a perfect spot to be, because you don't scare the hell out of everybody, but you also don't make them want to throw up. And what's interesting is that we don't want to talk about this kind of stuff.
We want to talk about this.
We totally do.
We do.
Did you have those insights when you were in those roles?
Well, I had them quite early on because I started to see a couple other things. First of all, I'm also really tall. Not first of all, now I'm on the third thing, I think. I'm really tall. And that helps. I've worked with a lot of women who are short, and they're struggling a lot to kind of get heard. And the next thing is that I am a native English speaker with a kind of acute accent.
Right.
And this is actually a huge help because in my career, I have worked with a lot of incredibly clever women, incredibly clever people, but let's talk women for the moment, who were not native English speakers and had accents that were difficult for people to understand. And so given that English is such a dominant language, I think this sort of soup of mine really worked. I was sort of strangely exotic, but also clearly understandable. Right. And it sort of worked in every country. And then I got a lot of energy, so I think the combination made me somebody that people wanted to promote.
Would you say you're competitive?
Don't try and play Scrabble against me. I'm very competitive in that. I don't think I'm competitive. I think I'm. It's not a word that comes to mind because in my understanding of the word competitive, somebody wins and somebody loses.
Right.
I'm ambitious.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm so interested in interdependence is that I think that the notion of winning and losing is really old-fashioned.
Yeah.
And that it's not only possible, it's necessary for more than, for a group to achieve things together. I think ambitious is a better word. Not so much anymore, but certainly I was.
Right. Can we double click into the physical aspects of like being a woman in positions of power, and like let's have that conversation because I think as a young woman, my dad was always the one who was really encouraging me. You can do whatever you want. You can just go, just do it, just push through. And in hindsight, I'm like, wow, I wish he told me how hard it was to navigate as a woman. Talk more about what you were saying about, you were not threatening, you had this accent. Like, what are the things that you recommend to women out there who want to grow and to lead?
I find this such a challenging conversation because, I come from the era of, doing what you needed to do to get the things done. And I remember, I was in my early 40s and I had a new boss in Danone. He was the sort of second big boss in Danone, and he and I had been working together at a distance for some years, but now I was his direct report. And the French have a way of saying things, and I'd been working for him for about a month, and he said to me, I won't do a fake French accent. He said to me, we need to talk about your leadership style and the way you deal with men. And I said, okay. And he said, I've noticed you over the years, and he said, you have two ways of dealing with men. Either you flirt or you behave like a child. And he said, I want you to understand that with me, neither of those are going to work. We're going to be adults dealing with each other.
Wow.
And I was shocked, I was like, really? But both of those rang true because I had watched women in my life, and those two techniques were pretty good. I was really good at the hand on the arm thing, the looking in their eyes thing. And then when that didn't work, I did but please, have some more money, whatever it was that I wanted a budget for. And I was embarrassed, but grateful that somebody finally told me this.
Told you, yeah.
Because I think we learn to work with the paradigm. And the trouble with that is we don't change the paradigm. But it's a dance, because if you don't have enough power, you don't even get to sit at the table. So,
Correct,
you just said it's hard. So it's a little dance that you have to do with yourself.
Yeah.
To work out when and how to use what you've got. And I think the most important thing is you need to start with understanding it. So I'll give you an example about the height thing.
Yeah.
There are many, many times when I refused to stand up, particularly later in life, because I didn't want to have that kind of down to thing. When I had a lot of power and I was CEO for more than 20 years, I pretty much sat all the time, or I sat on a high stool. But in my early years, if I needed to stand and tower over people, I did it because it worked. So I think you need to work out what your particular soup is, and then see how far you can push the boundaries of changing the system, but at the same time using it to your advantage, because we all have to do whatever whatever skills we have, but it's a politically tricky conversation to have, because I have had clients, and I've had people working on my team who spend a lot of time indignant about the system, and I understand. It enrages me. And you have to understand the power you have, because otherwise you're just a whiner.
All right, so insurance is not exactly the sexiest topic, but when you need it, you really need it.
Oh my God, girl. Yes. When I was running Loopy, I had more than enough horrible claims to deal with. But thank God for Amelia Risk. They were amazing. They picked up my phone calls, listened to me crying, and they had really good rates too.
So if you're a founder, you already have enough to stress about. So let Amelia Risk handle all of your insurance claims while you focus on your purpose and aligning that with your business.
That's right. And for all Say More listeners, you can get a free audit. So just go to ameliarisk.com, because boring things like insurance should still be really good.
I am obsessed with this. But at the same time, I also am like, do you think men have to think about what kind of soup they have?
No.
It's just women.
Well, it's minorities.
It's minorities and women, yeah.
It's anybody who's not a white man still.
Yes.
And, and of course now more. But yes, and it's annoying.
Yes.
That's how it is. Yes. And it's how it is.
Yeah. It is how it is. Yes, correct.
Can you talk a little bit about what you touched on early when you talked about how China changed you?
Yeah.
You started gathering these insights around, I don't want to speak for you, but maybe how you wanted to align your beliefs with your work. Like, can you talk more about that? What was it, other than seeing this country develop so quickly, that changed you as a person?
Well, let's start with the country itself. So first of all, I am a huge Sinophile or China fan. I love that country, and I get really upset when people demonize it. But moving there was the biggest shock that I could have had.
Where were you?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Where and how old?
I was like 45.
Okay.
And I was the CEO of the Danone biscuit business, and then Kraft bought our business, and I became a CEO of the joint businesses. And I started off at 150 million and took it to $1 billion in that 6 years. So there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of. And I had moved a lot before. I had lived in obviously Anglo-Saxon countries. I also lived in France. But I had never lived in a country that was culturally so different. And the thing that was the most notable was how very vulnerable it was to lead in a country like that, where my intellectual understanding was so limited. Like the codes in China are completely different than the codes that I was used to. And that led me into a sort of a full-bodied leadership experience. I started to read body language. I started to sense things. I started to feel my way through leading in a way that I hadn't, because my intellect, my head, my words, like, if you take language, many of the people spoke good English, but their vocabularies were small. So my vocabulary got very small. And the alignment between my body language and my language needed to be perfect, because they would catch me. I mean, if I was angry and I tried to pretend I wasn't, I couldn't get away with that. I can get away with that in America because they're listening to my words. They're not feeling me. But in China, I couldn't do that. So there's something in me woke up that had not been awake before. That's the best way that I can describe it. We could go down some other paths, but that's the best way to describe it. And then this sort of frenetic more that I had been on, by that time I was sort of trying to find the recipe for a happy life. And, my recipe had been sort of more money, more power, more shoes, less weight, more blonde hair, more different, I was married for the second time by then, more. And then I saw more, there's nothing at the end of more.
Right.
So
Only
I think
more.
I beg your pardon?
Only more.
Only more, exactly. And I think it was also the combination of, like, I remember at some point I had decided that there was a financial number that I needed to get when I would be like happy and safe. And I remember looking at my bank balance and seeing that number and realizing that I didn't feel anything and thinking,
Wow.
shit, I better double the number.
Wow.
And then I thought, that's ridiculous now. So there was something about the whole combination of that trajectory and China and seeing China at a macro level that all came together in a huge change. And of course, I found my beloved dog there. And I think this is another interesting thing. Only animal owners understand really the animal thing. That dog, who was a little street dog found underneath a car outside the Coca-Cola factory, he broke my heart open as well. And he's still with me, the much-traveled stir-fry. He changed me as well. He saved me, no doubt.
I always say that. I say to friends, if you save them, they'll save you. And I think a lot of people who rescue animals totally get that.
Yeah.
The more thing, do you feel like that was amplified working in business? Because you studied psychology, you were going down that path, then a door opened, a marketing door at Unilever opened, and you got on this business treadmill. Like, do you think you would have landed there no matter what? Or do you feel like being in business is really that mix with your ambition and your curiosity kind of got you to that place?
Difficult to say, it's hypothetical, but I can tell you what I see now, particularly in my clients.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really important question because I think we've been sold a kind of a two-track theory. One is, you get the outside of your life right, you'll be happy. And that's, the more track. And it's an obvious track. And of course, we've got an entire industry designed around that. The other is I'm broken and something happened in my past that I need to repair in order for me to be happy. And there's an entire industry around that too.
Right.
And there is no cheese down either of those tunnels. You are magnificent, like right now. And no matter what you're wearing and no matter what happened when you were a child. And the sort of addiction to those two paths is a very potent cocktail of misery. And what I notice is that kind of in a way, the people at either end of it have it easier, like the people who really fall to their knees in full-on addiction, jail, all that stuff, and the people who get everything they ever wanted, they've kind of both worked out that the system doesn't work for various reasons, and they think we need to do something else. The worrying bit is all of those of us in the middle who think, we're not bad, but if we could just do a little bit more, if we could just be a little bit more, a little bit less, a little bit more, a little bit less, a little bit, it's exhausting and there is nothing there.
Yeah.
And so I think corporate feeds sort of one track there, the kind of outside more, although corporate's increasingly feeding the other two. Right. But that's kind of how it looks to me today. And I tried both, I went down both of those tracks,
Do you feel like ambition can be channeled in a different way then? Because when I'm hearing you talk, I can relate in so many ways, and I'm sure a lot of people can and a lot of listeners can, but I also would call myself ambitious, and I think I'm being told by society that is a good character trait, because I think ambition is also growth, and growth is not necessarily more. It's maybe improvement or betterment. Like, can you talk a little bit about that? Do you think ambition can be in that way something positive that can be channeled for a greater good, for improvement versus just having more?
I noticed that I don't love the word, but I'll tell you how it looks to me. I'm a big fan of the word desire, because, and I now use the words love and God, no matter what people think. God, universe, spirit, whatever. Desire is God, wisdom, spirit's way of speaking to us. Mm-hmm. Everybody in this room desires, wants different things. Mm-hmm. And that draw, that urge, that moving toward is so precious. If that is an urge or a draw or a moving towards rescuing animals, climbing a corporate ladder, eating pasta, I don't know, becoming a podcaster, that is your signal. Mm-hmm. And if it comes to you in this sort of, there's a quiet, gentle, but firmness to that sort of desire that is magical, miraculous, special. And it's the best navigation tool that I know. The sort of thin, reedy, strident, needy, gotta has a completely different feel to it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's more useful to navigate mm-hmm. from, like, even as I speak that, I can feel myself getting tense. Whereas mm-hmm. if I come back down to this sort of wanting, mm-hmm. Like, wow, that's cool. So listen to that and mm-hmm. go there.
I'm like moving around in my chair right now on this, because I want to know, when did you discover this? Because I think, like, we started this podcast and we had talked about it for a long time. And it was sort of in the middle of this thing Isabel was going through. And I just kept telling her, like, come back to your body because you already know. And we were like, man, we need to talk about this, because it's in those moments when a lot of entrepreneurs come up with their best idea, or like they know exactly which direction they need to take or decision they need to make. And I'm curious, like, when did that become clear for you?
This is kind of the whole subject of this is how to have a happy life.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because I think Isabel and I have used this metaphor before of a snow globe. One of the big misunderstandings of our culture is that more thinking, more in your head is going to get you better results, better decisions, whatever it is that you've decided you want. And the exact opposite of that is true. And if you think about a snow globe, which I love, I always have one near me, we churn it up, we shake it around. We have about 70,000 thoughts a day. And about 69,990 of them are very uninteresting. They're the same old things you've been thinking for many years. But a few of them are magnificent. And they come to you at the most unexpected times. In the shower is the cliche, but running or playing with your dog or whatever is when your guard is down and when your thinking settles. And they always come with a feeling. They always come with a something, like a knowing is maybe one of the words, but there's a sort of an ease, a sort of a settledness. And a few of them go a long way. Mm-hmm. Like I've become used to the fact that most of my thinking is very uninteresting. Most of it's not even mine. I just stole it from other people and somehow I'm embedded it. But then the really good stuff comes. If you take just today, so I thought we were online, and then I didn't realize we were in person. In the sort of, 5 minutes that it took me to realize, oh my goodness, I've made a mistake, I should be there, I am here, I settled, the solution made itself clear, and then I went and did the thing calmly. That's how we work. That's how humans work, all of us. But we just misunderstand, and we think we need to think more. Mm-hmm. And that's not true. And also on the subject of the body, one of my favorite people in the world is an 85-year-old teacher in how to have a happy life. Her name is Mavis Khan. She has a book called It's That Simple. And she has a great sentence, which is, you cannot slip a thought past a body. Mm. So, you can be angry. You try and pretend you're not, but your body knows, So just settle down enough to feel it.
I love that. Did you bring any of this learning into your leadership positions?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't actually think I did, but then when I look back, I really did. So, for example, in my last, I would think, 20 years, I never made a decision without sleeping on it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand why, but it seemed to make sense to me. And I would wake up in the morning and I would know.
Yes.
I would know. And it makes sense because, my thinking had settled overnight and my subconscious, my system had a chance to process.
Yeah.
Fast, macho decision-making is, people love it. Mm-hmm. It's generally terrible decision-making.
Right. It's really cool that you said that. My dad used to tell me that.
Sleep on it.
Sleep on it, yeah, because your subconscious will work it out and you'll have an answer in the morning.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And then the really cool thing is, now I realize it doesn't even matter what the answer is. Because whatever happens is going to be fine.
Yeah. Right. Or you could be Steve Jobs and ignore it and then it will go away. Did you guys hear about this? He used to think that if there were certain problems, that if he just ignored them, they would go away.
Oh, and he's right.
Yeah.
Because most of the problems we make up are just made up.
That's
exactly.
Is very true. They're just thoughts. One of the 70,000 thoughts.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about being a coach is I'll have a person weeping, upset about something, really, really, really upset about something. And then the next week, the screen opens up or they walk into the door and they don't raise it.
Gone.
At all. It's gone. Mm-hmm. And so often I point out to them, and then they bring the new thing, and then I point out to them that the new thing's going to be gone next week. It's sort of fairly obvious, right?
I'm so curious if you can talk a little bit about this really exciting thing that you did when you were at Danone and you helped them move to being the largest B Corp in the world. Talk a little bit, maybe briefly, about B Corp for our listeners, what the mission is of that organization, and how you decided that this was going to be what you were going to do, which I assume wasn't easy because this is a large company and this requires shifting things and changing mindsets and perspectives.
So I'll tell you, first of all, what B Corp is, which is it's a certification system. The best way to describe it, I think, is like fair trade for business. There are really two major requirements. One is you have to legally change the status of your business to become some sort of version of a benefit corporation so that you're clear that you're not only meeting your financial shareholders' needs. And secondly, it's a point system where you have to get more than 80 points out of 200 points. And it's a environmental and social justice set of criteria. I'll talk about it, and then I will also talk about using your power well, because that kind of comes back to the previous conversation about power. I remember the old days where in a room like this, people would be smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
And in those days, it's incomprehensible that we would be in a situation now where it's incredible. And nobody would smoke a cigarette, right? Because it was a combination of legal restriction, information about the impacts of smoking, and social pressure that came together to make smoking a much smaller thing, particularly in developed countries. I've always thought that the same should be true for business, that it is incomprehensible that business is only judged on its financial results, that its impact on the planet and the people of the planet are not measured in the notion of success of business. And, this is not an original thought. There are lots of people who have had this thought. And I had for a long time been looking for an alternative way of measuring businesses. And the CEO of Danone at the time, Emmanuel Faber, was a real visionary. And we decided that B Corp, which was a not-for-profit that had been formed here in the US, was the closest that we had come to a metric system for business that was much more holistic and much more appropriate and much more reasonable. And at that point, only small businesses had become B Corps, and private businesses, people like Patagonia, people like Bombas, people like Dr. Bronner's. There were lots of sort of smaller companies. And so we decided that we wanted to do it in Danone. And there was a bigger story. We did it in some of the countries in Europe, but then we bought a big company here in the US, White Wave, and we decided that this was our opportunity to really prove that you could do it in a big company. So we established that new North American entity as a public benefit corporation, and we set off to become a B Corp, and then we became one. And I think it is a really good example of what big, powerful businesses should be doing.
Right.
They have a responsibility. If you think about it, and in my TED Talk, I talk about the fact that big companies use the resources of the planet, like being on a river, and it is their responsibility to use those resources, both physical and human, with respect and with responsibility, and to show the way for other companies to do that. Since we became a B Corp, a lot of the things that we talked about are part of normal legislation in Europe. Sadly, in the US, we've gone in the other direction.
Right, yeah.
But in many parts of the world, Europe, Australia, it's kind of, well, of course, that those things are important for business. So I think it was a really great mission, and I'm deeply sad about the fact that this is not true in the US.
On Say More, we've discovered that the best ideas rarely come when you're distracted, uncomfortable, and not fully present in your body. It's nearly impossible to hear that inner voice when you're wrestling with your clothes, especially ones that are made of plastic and that don't breathe. By the way, 60% of today's clothing is made from plastic. That's why I founded The Big Favorite, super soft, 100% Pima cotton tees, underwear, and other essentials for men and women. They're simple, well-made, and designed for fit and comfort, sure to become a new favorite, so you can focus on the things that matter, like letting a good idea hit. Shop basics and underwear at thebigfavorite.com and use SayMore15 for 15% off your first purchase.
Were there challenges when it sounds like the CEO was very supportive, but what about everybody else? Like,
how did you rally those people?
Easy to get people on board to do this, because it's a process to do the certification. And if you don't get enough points, I guess you have to change the way you do certain things and change the systems in the business. Like, how did you get everybody else excited about this?
Well, again, I think that there are a couple of things here that are worth pointing out. People listening to this podcast are at they're in various places, various levels of organizations. Many of them are entrepreneurs. One of the big illusions, I think, is that the power is somewhere other than where you are. One of the things I always think that's really sad about the climate and environmental movement is that the issues are almost always framed in a way that we have least influence on them. They're sort of in some place that's just not us. Everybody can do something really powerful from wherever they are. And one of the things we found, as a CEO, a CEO of a local business with a boss who was supportive, I needed to do what I needed to do, and I needed to use the power that I needed to use. So, for example, I could challenge our feed suppliers. We were making milk in those days and yogurt, and I could challenge our feed suppliers to move to non-GM feed, and I could challenge them, force them to move to organic in some places because we had buying power. There were people more junior in our organization who didn't have that kind of power, but they were fascinated by the idea of a business that they could turn into something that they could be proud of. Right. Most people, many people have children, and the future that they're leaving for their children is really important to them. And so they wanted to work for a business that was trying to do things in a better way. And so they were inspired to problem solve. So we had all sorts of extraordinary, problem solving and collaboration going on in all sorts of parts of the business to sort of solve this new problem, because at some visceral level, many people understand that this system does not work. Just because we've been sold the fact that the P&L and the balance sheet is the only thing that matters does not mean that that's true.
Right.
People know, they understand that, and so they want to have an opportunity to help. And so they did. I mean, we became a B Corp within a year of us.
It's incredible.
Making the decision.
It's so amazing. I'm curious to like switching over to sort of the coaching side of this and using your experience to give advice to entrepreneurs at whatever stage you are advising them in. But if they're trying to, like if you're seeing a trend towards more people trying to do better and trying to like push for this, and how you sort of advise them to, get people on board.
One of the things that I have noticed in the months since the new administration took over in the United States, people have gone through a phase of sort of kind of confusion and overwhelm many people in my world. And then there's been a lot of what I would consider to be remarkable resilience showed by a lot of people as they pivot their lives to find out where they stand in this whole game. And I don't want to be kind of simplistically partisan here. The world is extremely complicated right now. And there are lots of things that many of us don't understand or didn't understand. And I found myself in many situations where I kind of realized that I am expressing opinions that I haven't even researched. I've just borrowed them from other people. And I've had to learn to either work out what I think about things or shut up, because otherwise I just don't contribute powerfully to the conversation. And what I think is called for all of us is to decide who we are in this moment. And for many entrepreneurs, and I invest my money with an organization called Radical Impact, which only invests in businesses that are doing good. All private companies, small companies, those companies are doing incredibly well because there are a lot of people who don't want to invest in businesses that are on the straight out, stock market metrics. They want to invest in young people or people who are doing really good things. And there are a lot of people doing really, really, really good things, and a lot of people doing really good things locally. I've, for example, chosen to bring my focus much more local than I was before. I'm even, a volunteer for the Audubon Society to take care of the plovers who are nesting on the beaches of Connecticut.
It's amazing.
Because in a time when I don't know what is going on, I know what I can see with my eyes, and I know that I can make a difference. So I think the closer you are to your own point of power, the more successful you're going to be in getting people to join you on the mission.
Love that.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I say to many of my clients is, what's the smallest step you can take right now? Because many people, we get so grandiose, and then we lose the plot, and we get all we confuse ourselves.
Yeah.
Just take a breath and settle down. Check your own body, your desires, your wanting, your what's moving you, and then figure out who else can come and join you.
Wow.
Because the other thing that we do, I think, again, this is very much an American characteristic. I want to do it myself. I want to do it myself. And frankly, the most interesting thing that I can do myself is tie my own shoelaces. After that, I need everybody.
Yeah.
Think about in this room, there are people here that we need who are recording this. And so the question of who can you partner with needs to come very quickly after the I want, I like, I'm moved by.
Yeah.
And then you'll work it out because you're human.
That is such powerful advice. And it brings me back to something that you said earlier about how some of the crises that we're facing now have become sort of like these headlines that are so unattainable. And you're like, okay, the temperature's rising. How do I fix the temperature? But you're not saying fix the temperature. You're saying go local.
Yeah.
Work with your body, work with what feels good, work with what you're excited with, and then rally partners and make a community around it.
And I guess even if you don't rally people, it's still amazing how much agency everybody has individually.
Yeah.
It's great and important to rally people, but I think I hear this a lot when people talk about how hard it is to go vegan, and it's all very binary, and it's like, well, and does it even matter if I stop eating animals? And I'm like, yeah, like if you look at it like from a purely numbers perspective, of course, if you're not consuming them individually, there's less that are being slaughtered. Like that's the reality of it. And I think that sense of agency that you're talking about that we all have and really need to embrace in a very, very concrete, hyper-local way is the solution to this.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I use a lot as a mental kind of prompt is, what would a video camera see if they were following me around? You know, one of the things that I think we do, we just talk too much, all of us, and then blah, blah, blah. And sometimes I'm halfway through, I mean, especially on a podcast, but sometimes I'm halfway through a sentence and I think, I'm just talking complete nonsense here. Back up. If somebody is walking around with a video camera, what are they watching you do? And it's very interesting, these moments of kindness, the moments of the unguarded moments, that's who you actually are.
Right.
And you're kinder than you think, because we kind of screen out a lot of the really good stuff we do. Just notice what you're actually doing in your own, like your teeny, teeny, teeny little world. And then there are a few things that you can do. I get enormous pleasure for some reason out of the composting thing.
Yes,
I mean,
me too.
Why is it so much fun to chop the edge of the carrots off and put it in the little thingy and then put it down in the compost?
Because it feels like what it's meant to do,
Exactly. Exactly. And I've been a vegan a long time, and one of the things I love is I have people for dinner. And I never say anything about being vegan. Right. And they say, that was a lovely meal. And I kind of want to go, yay us. You didn't even notice it was vegan. Yeah. It gives me an enormous pleasure. So am I saving the world? No, but I'm having a lot of fun.
Right.
So, and it doesn't have to be that. Because the thing about the vegan thing is people go, I ate bacon and I'm not a good person. Okay, pick something else.
Right.
Pick something else. Be kind somewhere else. Be big somewhere else. Be magnificent somewhere else.
Can you talk about, you've told me this very early when we got to know each other, that you were volunteering at a local homeless shelter, and that you're also, I don't know if that was in context with that, but you've developed a relationship with a homeless person who I guess lives in Central Park. And that touched me so much when you were describing that, and also how you've let that person come to your home and take a shower, and you've really developed a relationship with that human, and you see him for the human that he is. How did this come about?
Well, I used to work in a homeless shelter, but that was a separate subject. Pre-COVID, now it's shut down, sadly, which is another whole issue. How many shelters have shut down since COVID? But so I met Armando in 2012 when I first came to the US. He was sitting on a bench, the same bench that he sits on right now. And if anybody's ever in Central Park, you just walk from Bow Bridge to the boathouse on the lowest possible road in the morning, and you'll see him there every day. And he was sitting on a bench, looked like your average homeless person, until I saw on his little box that had all of his possessions, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. Wow. And I thought, that's not what I would have expected on the box of a homeless guy. And so I got intrigued, and then I started speaking to him, and then we became friends. And it turned out that he was an ex-addict. He'd been an addict for many, many years. And then he'd had an enlightenment experience, a moment of grace, whatever you want to call it. He dropped all of his drug and alcohol paraphernalia, cigarettes, and had then sort of tried to work out what had happened to him. And then he found Eckhart Tolle's book in Spanish because he's Hispanic. And he said, oh, that's what happened. That's what, I found the present moment. And so he now sits on a bench, he sleeps on another bench in Central Park, and he feeds animals and people on that bench. And we've become extremely close. I had a project, my own personal coach is a guy called Michael Neal, and he runs a program every year called Creating the Impossible, which you get a project that has a less than 20% chance of success that makes you gasp, grin, or giggle, which is part of the desire thing. In 90 days, you just try and see what you can do. And so I decided that it would be very cool to get Eckhart Tolle to come to Central Park to meet him.
Oh my God.
And so in a variety of twisty-turny ways, that happened. So Eckhart came to Central Park in Eckhart, I speak about it as if he's my buddy, but anyway, he came in 2018 to see Armando. I've got some fab photographs of that.
Wow.
What did Armando? Did you surprise? Did Armando know this was in the works?
No. Armando didn't know. I was too scared that it wouldn't happen, so I didn't tell him. But it was actually very cool because Eckhart walked down the path towards Armando, and Armando was sitting on the bench, and he looked up, and you could see the look of sort of recognition on his face, and then he got up, and they hugged they didn't speak for like 5 minutes. They just hugged.
Wow.
I mean, those of us who were there, we were all crying. None of us had
I'm
thought.
going to cry.
None of us had thought to bring a video camera or anything. We were like, whoa, And then they sat down on a bench and they had a chat. And I remember Armando said to Eckhart, yeah, the creation uses me. And Eckhart said, yeah, the creation uses me too. They just kind of hung. It was all very ordinary and fabulous. So he's a really good friend of mine, and he's really special because he lives a life that the more brigade thinks is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to go and visit him, I can tell you that he is in the top 0.0% of happy people in Central Park because he's surrounded by people who have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And they're not happy.
Yeah.
Many times I come around the corner to visit him, and there's some person crying on the bench because their boyfriend left them or they lost their job or whatever, and he just slept on a bench. So he's a really special guy. He's changed my life in many ways.
Wow. I'm like speechless after that.
You gotta go. I would bring him here, but his English is strongly accented. But you gotta go and visit him, or I'll take you there to visit him anytime.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we should.
Yeah. And he always comes in Connecticut. They have this thing called the Lobster Festival, which is your nightmare and my nightmare. But Armando loves a lobster, and so I take him to Connecticut for the Lobster Festival, and he eats mine as well.
I love it. That's really sweet.
That's amazing.
So and in fact, I think this is one of the only other thing that I think is really interesting for people to consider is the question of who you spend your time with. Years ago, I remember going to the R&D factory in R&D center in the Netherlands, and they were doing nutrition work, and I remember saying to the nutrition, the big boss of nutrition, how do I know that I'm healthy? How do I know that I'm eating the right things and doing the right things? And he said, well, if I were investigating your health, I would start with the 5 people you spend most of your time with.
Wow.
Because that's the most important impact for you. And I think it's true in general. The question of who you spend your time with, not only for your body, but for your sort of general sense of well-being, is an interesting question. And since that, I've been quite careful about who I spend my time with. And I like to have people who are very diverse. Like, not too many people who think exactly the same as me. It's boring. But I think that's a really interesting inquiry for people, is who you're spending your time with, and get friends with people who are not like you.
Yeah. Who do you spend? Who are the 5 people that you spend time with?
Well,
Armando.
Armando, my boyfriend Eddie, who's Swiss German and a physicist, and has a completely different way of thinking of the world than me. He's very visual. So, I'm a blah, 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 and he's always showing me photographs that he just took, or things that he just
Is he theoretical or is he mathematical?
He's a solid state physicist.
Okay.
So he did a lot. He was at IBM for a long time, did a lot of work in mobile phones and stuff. So it's a very interesting way of thinking. I don't understand most of what he says about things like that, but I spend most of my time with those two. And then that's a really good question. Who else do I spend time with?
Stir fry.
Stir fry, of course. That's 4. That does.
Yes.
That'll do.
That'll do. Let's talk about the rhinos.
Yes.
You are very involved in conservation. How did you get involved in that? And what was the, I guess I would call it the electric pull that made you gasp, giggle, or grin about rhinos?
So my love for rhinos is completely inexplicable. It is a total. I adore rhinos, and it's what I said earlier. Like, why? I don't know. The thing I love about it is so random. There's something so innocent about them. They're magnificent creatures, and they're also incredibly vulnerable. They don't cause damage to anybody other than other rhinos when they're fighting for mating rights or territory, and yet they are poached by humans because they're so innocent. They're so kind of trusting. So I had an experience when I was in my teens when I saw my first rhino, and I was completely sort of overwhelmed and stunned by the beauty, the strength, the fragility, the vulnerability of them. And it's been my passion ever since. And, what I've found is that pretty much everything, it doesn't matter where you start, you always land up at some combination of human rights, environmental rights, and some sort of, combination of supporting landscape and supporting humans in order to support whatever it is that you're interested in. And so if you take rhinos, one of the reasons they're poached is you've got people on one part of the world who have all sorts of strange beliefs about the magical properties of rhinos. And the same people who kind of ship them, and mostly to Vietnam and China, are the same people who ship guns and drugs and stuff. But the people who actually do the killing are very poor people who don't have other ways to feed their families. And so solving the local, employment situation is really important. And then habitat loss is, another really important area, really important reason why rhinos are threatened. So the 2 organizations that I support the most focus on it holistically. They don't just try and solve, if you take, pandas are a good example. The Chinese have bred pandas that are basically completely incapable of taking care of themselves. Anybody who's watched a YouTube video of those really sweet pandas, they are basically large furry animals that are taken care of by humans.
Yeah.
They're not rewilded. There's nothing that's really generally done for the environment. And it's not a great use of time and money and effort in my opinion. The people that I work with on rhino work are very interested in making sure that the habitat is taken care of and making sure that the people who kind of live near the rhinos understand how important they are and work with them and benefit from them. So the 2 organizations that I support are the Wildlife Conservation Network and Care for Wild. So if anybody wants to donate to either of those people, that would be really good. But it's a wonderful way of spending my time and energy and effort.
Do you travel back to see them? Because they're not here.
No, they're not. I do, although this year I'm not flying.
Okay.
I made a decision to not fly at all this year.
Wow.
Another sort of playing with the whole question of my impact on the planet.
Sure.
Right. So I'm not flying this year. It'll be interesting to see. I'm halfway through. I'm enjoying not flying at all. But yes, of course, I have gone many times and will go probably in the future.
Amazing. Here's one of my crazy questions that maybe I'll cut. Are you familiar with Rupert Sheldrake's work and animal telepathy?
Yeah.
Do you believe that we can communicate with the rhinos?
Sure.
Have you talked to them?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I have talked to them, because it's very difficult to separate out whether they're talking to me or whether I'm imagining it.
Sure.
I mean, I talk to my dog all the time, and I'm sure he talks back to me, but it's it's in my mind.
Yeah.
The idea that animals don't communicate is insane to me.
Yes.
So the question is just what frequency we're on. And I think I'm probably not on the right frequency a lot of the time.
I don't know. It sounds like you might be. You're talking about being in your body. I find that the most, when I can communicate, because I actually I'm a developing medium, and I also am a developing animal communicator. And I've actually used this, I'm not going to lie, and I have no idea if I'm going to leave this in the podcast, but I have actually used this for pest control for neighbors. And it's worked. It's worked. Yeah. And I've actually talked to your cat.
I talked to my cat before he passed last year.
I did.
Yeah.
I talked to him, and I told him it was okay to go, and the next morning he did. So I believe we can talk to them, and I think by just being heart-centered and in our bodies, you can start to hear it. As long as you can open up to it, you can hear it, and then you can even ask for validation. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that we don't. So interesting that you raised this, because I've just finished reading a book called Raising Hare about a woman who raised a hare, Hare, obviously. And I loved the book, and it broke my heart. And I realized that, it's actually a beautiful book and has a happy ending and all that, but there are parts of it that broke my heart. I think one of the reasons we don't open these channels is because we're not ready for the heartbreak.
Yeah.
And the sort of question that I'm in for myself now is, how up for the heartbreak journey am I?
Yeah.
Am I?
Right.
Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you can't rush it. I think your system only lets you wake up when you're ready.
Right.
And so you're obviously waking up in a way that is incrementally, so your system can calibrate.
Yeah.
If we open that channel and we're not ready, I think it's overwhelming to us.
I think that's right. So. Yeah, for sure. It's beautiful.
Amazing. Well, we are wrapping this up, even though we could talk to you forever.
I know. I feel like I just had this was such an amazing conversation.
I told you it would be amazing.
I know.
We have a few quick fire questions for you to close it out with. Number one is, what would you say is your life's purpose, and how does it align with your work?
You're not going to like my answer, but I don't have a clue.
Okay.
And I don't care.
I love that answer, actually.
I don't
and you
care.
don't care.
Amazing.
That's great.
I will never know.
Yeah. What is your definition of success, and why?
I don't think I care about that either.
Okay, love it. Any reads, listens, books, things that you recommend? Raising Hare sounds like it's potentially one of them. Anything else you think we should check out?
I love memoirs. I read memoirs all the time. I just finished reading Memorial Day by Geraldine Brooks. And I just finished reading Cellar Rat, which is about a woman who's a sommelier and waitress in New York City, waiter in New York City. Yeah, that's and Raising Hare is by a woman called Chloe Dalton. It's a beautiful book. It's in the same genre as My Octopus Teacher. The people who who have experiences with animals that changes them. I love those. And I'm also a huge poetry fan. I'm a big fan of David White, Mark Nepo, And so I have their books by my bed. And there is a beautiful piece by David White in his latest book, which is called Consolations 2, about injury. And it's about how we take our bodies for granted until they're injured. And then they call us to take care of them.
Right.
And it's a beautiful piece, so that's what occurs to me.
I love it.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Lorna. This
Lorna,
was so
thank
special.
you so much.
You're
What an
most
amazing interview.
Thank you.
Yes.